The Zephyrian War Academy stood like a massive crystal fortress against the crimson sky of Kepler 442b. For 2 centuries, this institution had molded the finest warriors in the galaxy, transforming recruits into living weapons through brutal training regimens that would break lesser species. Commander Vextar watched from his observation deck as thousands of cadets performed their morning combat drills in the vast courtyard below. The Academy's reputation was legendary across 17 star systems. Only the strongest, fastest, and most intelligent beings from dozens of worlds earned admission. The training lasted exactly 200 years, a span that allowed for perfect mastery of every combat technique known to galactic civilization. Graduates emerged as unstoppable forces, capable of single-handedly conquering entire planets. Cadet Zarathul executed a perfect aerial strike against a hovering combat drone, her 4 arms moving in deadly harmony, while her enhanced reflexes calculated trajectory with mathematical precision. She belonged to the Catherian race, beings whose natural agility surpassed most organic life forms. Around her, cadets from various species demonstrated their specialized skills. The massive Goliath warriors crushed titanium targets with their bare hands, while the ethereal Scion-class telepaths shattered enemy minds with focused mental attacks. The Academy's training methods pushed every cadet beyond their biological limits. Neural enhancement surgeries improved reaction times by 400%. Gravitational conditioning chambers subjected trainees to forces that would liquefy unprotected beings. Combat simulations replicated the most challenging battlefield scenarios from galactic history. The cadets learned to fight in zero gravity, underwater, in toxic atmospheres, and across dimensions that defied natural physics. Master Instructor Corvin addressed the assembled cadets during their evening strategy session. His scarred face bore witness to countless battles across the Outer Rim territories. "You represent the pinnacle of military evolution," he declared, his voice echoing through the massive hall. "Each of you possesses capabilities that exceed entire armies from primitive worlds. Your training encompasses every form of warfare developed over 10,000 years of galactic conflict." The academic curriculum was equally demanding. Cadets studied the military histories of 247 different civilizations. They memorized the weaknesses of every known species, learned to exploit environmental advantages, and mastered technologies that most worlds considered science fiction. Advanced courses covered quantum warfare, dimensional combat, and psychic domination techniques. Physical conditioning occurred in chambers that simulated the harshest environments in known space. Cadets trained on ice worlds where temperatures dropped to absolute zero, desert planets with gravity 12 times standard, and toxic swamps filled with predators evolved for maximum lethality. The survival rate for first-year cadets hovered around 23%, but those who endured emerged transformed into something beyond normal biological limitations. The weapon mastery program required proficiency with over 3,000 different combat systems. From molecular disruptors to plasma cannons, from psychic amplifiers to gravity manipulation devices, every cadet achieved expert status with technologies that could reshape matter itself. They learned to fight with ancient blades forged from neutron star material and energy weapons that drew power directly from stellar cores. During her 150th year of training, Zarathul participated in the Academy's most challenging exercise, the Extinction Protocol Simulation. This scenario replicated the complete annihilation of advanced civilizations, requiring cadets to systematically eliminate entire populations while adapting to increasingly desperate defensive measures. The simulation had been designed using data from actual planetary conquests, ensuring maximum realism. The cadets worked in synchronized units, their movements coordinated through neural implants that shared tactical information instantly. Zarathul's team eliminated 10,000 simulated defenders in under 6 minutes, using a combination of orbital bombardment, ground assault, and psychological warfare. Their performance rated among the Academy's top 1% in recorded history. Intelligence gathering formed another crucial component of their education. Cadets learned to infiltrate any society, assuming false identities and gathering strategic information without detection. They mastered 400 different languages, studied cultural patterns across known space, and developed the ability to blend seamlessly with populations they intended to conquer. The Medical Enhancement Program ensured each graduate possessed superhuman endurance and healing capabilities. Nanobotic systems repaired injuries in real time, while genetic modifications increased strength, speed, and sensory acuity far beyond natural limits. Pain suppressors allowed cadets to continue fighting despite injuries that would incapacitate normal beings. Command Vexitar reviewed the final year training schedules with quiet satisfaction. This graduating class showed exceptional promise, with average performance ratings 15% higher than previous groups. They had mastered every combat discipline, survived impossible challenges, and demonstrated strategic thinking that surpassed veteran officers with centuries of experience. The psychological conditioning proved equally thorough. Cadets underwent mental programming that eliminated fear, doubt, and hesitation during combat situations. They learned to view lesser species as obstacles rather than sentient beings, developing the emotional detachment necessary for efficient conquest operations. Empathy became a weakness to suppress rather than a trait to cultivate. As graduation approached, rumors circulated about their first deployment target. Whispers suggested a primitive world in a remote spiral arm, a backwater planet called Earth, inhabited by a species that had barely achieved interstellar awareness. The prospect excited most cadets, who viewed easy conquest as a well-deserved reward after 2 centuries of grueling preparation. Zarathul felt confident in her abilities and those of her fellow graduates. They represented the ultimate fusion of biological evolution, technological enhancement, and military science. No force in known space could challenge warriors trained for 200 years in every aspect of combat, warfare, and conquest. The Academy's final ceremony took place under the light of 3 moons, with representatives from 17 worlds attending to witness the graduation of the most formidable military force ever assembled. Each cadet received their commission as Galactic Conquest Specialists, authorized to lead planetary subjugation campaigns across unexplored territories. Tomorrow, they would board the flagship, Eternal Dominion, and begin their journey toward the Earth system. Command estimated the entire operation would require perhaps a few hours to achieve complete planetary control. The primitive inhabitants possessed chemical propellant weapons and crude electronic systems, technology centuries behind galactic standard. Zarathul checked her equipment one final time, ensuring her plasma rifle was calibrated and her armor systems functioning perfectly. Around her, thousands of fellow graduates made similar preparations, their confidence absolute after 2 centuries of intensive preparation. The galaxy's most advanced military training had forged them into unstoppable instruments of conquest. The first phase of their Earth mission would demonstrate galactic superiority through overwhelming displays of technological advancement, followed by systematic elimination of any resistance. Military analysts predicted total victory within standard galactic combat time frames, establishing Earth as another conquered territory in the expanding galactic empire. None of the graduates suspected that their 200 years of training might prove insufficient against an opponent unlike any they had studied or simulated during their extensive preparation at the Academy. The Eternal Dominion dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, its massive hull bristling with weapons capable of cracking moons in half. Admiral Kethvar studied the primitive planet through the ship's advanced sensors, noting the scattered lights of human settlements and the crude satellites orbiting their homeworld. The readings confirmed everything intelligence had predicted, a backward species with laughably primitive technology. "Begin standard conquest protocol," the Admiral commanded. settling into his command throne. Around him, holographic displays showed the deployment positions of his elite forces. 50,000 graduates from the Zephyrian War Academy stood ready in drop pods, each one a perfect killing machine, trained for 2 centuries in every conceivable form of warfare. Zarathul secured herself in Drop Pod Alpha 7, surrounded by 9 other specialists from her graduation class. Their pod was equipped with stealth generators, emergency teleporters, and enough firepower to level a city block. Her combat armor automatically adjusted its camouflage patterns while running final system checks on her weapons array. "Remember," her squad leader Torax announced through their neural link, "these humans haven't achieved proper spaceflight yet. Their most advanced weapons use chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Intelligence suggests their reaction times are 300% slower than baseline galactic standard. Expect minimal resistance." The preliminary sensor sweep revealed human military installations scattered across the planet's surface. Their largest weapons appeared to be crude missiles with conventional explosive warheads, technology that galactic civilization had abandoned millennia ago. The humans showed no evidence of energy shields, plasma weaponry, or even basic gravitational manipulation. Drop operations commenced at dawn, Earth time. The first wave consisted of 10,000 elite warriors targeting major population centers and military bases. Their orders were simple: demonstrate overwhelming superiority, eliminate organized resistance, and prepare for full planetary occupation within 6 standard hours. Zarathul's pod penetrated Earth's atmosphere like a meteorite, its heat shields glowing as it descended toward a military installation near a place called Colorado Springs. Through her pod's sensors, she observed the primitive concrete structures below, noting the complete absence of energy barriers or defensive systems worthy of the name. The landing zone contained several large buildings and what appeared to be underground facilities. Human personnel moved about with their characteristic slow, awkward gait, apparently unaware that their world was about to fall under galactic dominion. Their crude vehicles moved on wheels rather than proper hover technology, and their communications relied on electromagnetic radiation rather than quantum entanglement. As her pod touched down, Zarathul burst through the entry hatch with fluid grace, her forearms drawing weapons in a motion too fast for human eyes to track. Around her, the other members of Alpha Squad deployed in perfect formation, their enhanced senses scanning for threats while their armor systems analyzed the local environment. The first humans to respond wore primitive cloth uniforms and carried metal tubes that fired chemical projectiles. Zarathul almost laughed at their pathetic attempt at weaponry. Her plasma rifle could vaporize their crude bullets before they traveled 10 meters, while her personal shields could deflect anything in their primitive arsenal. But something felt wrong from the moment combat began. The first human soldier she encountered moved differently than expected. Instead of the slow, clumsy actions intelligence had predicted, he demonstrated precise, controlled movements that reminded her uncomfortably of advanced combat training. His weapon discharged with surprising accuracy, forcing her to activate defensive protocols she hadn't expected to need. More disturbing was his apparent lack of fear. Galactic doctrine stated that primitive species typically panicked when confronted with superior technology, making conquest operations relatively straightforward. This human showed no signs of intimidation despite facing weapons that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. Torax's voice crackled through their communications array. "Alpha 3 is reporting unexpected resistance at Target Site 7. Humans are displaying tactical awareness beyond projected parameters." The engagement intensified rapidly. Human reinforcements arrived with shocking speed, and their coordination suggested military training far more sophisticated than intelligence reports had indicated. They employed combined arms tactics, suppressive fire patterns, and strategic positioning that forced the galactic soldiers to take cover behind their drop pods. Zarathul found herself locked in an extended firefight with a human squad that refused to retreat despite facing obviously superior firepower. Their primitive projectile weapons couldn't penetrate her armor, but their tactical discipline was undeniably impressive. They moved with practiced efficiency, supported each other's positions, and adapted to her enhanced mobility with disturbing effectiveness. The most shocking moment came when one human soldier somehow anticipated her flanking maneuver, positioning himself exactly where she planned to attack. His reaction time seemed impossibly fast for a species that supposedly possessed slower neural processing than baseline galactic standard. "Squad leader," Zarathul transmitted. "These humans are not performing according to intelligence projections. They appear to possess enhanced tactical capabilities and superior physical conditioning than preliminary reports suggested." Reports flooded in from other landing zones across the planet. Every galactic squad was encountering heavier resistance than expected. The humans weren't simply defending, they were actively hunting the invaders with coordinated precision that suggested extensive preparation for exactly this type of encounter. At Landing Zone Delta, a squad of Goliath warriors reported that human soldiers had somehow disabled their personal shields using electromagnetic pulse devices that shouldn't have been effective against galactic technology. The humans had then engaged them in close combat with primitive bladed weapons, displaying fighting skills that rivaled academy training. The communication channels filled with increasingly urgent status updates. Landing Zone Gamma had gone silent after reporting unusual human activity. Landing Zone Epsilon requested immediate reinforcement, claiming their Scion-class telepaths were somehow unable to penetrate human mental defenses. Admiral Kethvar monitored the situation from orbit with growing concern. The preliminary assault was supposed to achieve total tactical control within the first hour. Yet his forces were reporting sustained combat across multiple fronts. Human resistance was not only continuing, but apparently intensifying. Zarathul watched in disbelief as a human soldier executed a tactical role that would have earned approval from Master Instructor Corvin himself. The primitive being moved with enhanced reflexes and precision that suggested extensive combat conditioning. His equipment might be crude, but his skill level was undeniably professional. The most disturbing development came when her squad's intelligence specialist analyzed intercepted human communications. The primitive beings weren't panicking or calling for help. They were coordinating defensive operations with strategic sophistication that implied detailed advance planning for this exact scenario. "How did they know we were coming?" Torex demanded during a brief tactical pause. "Their response patterns suggest they prepared for galactic-level assault tactics specifically. That should be impossible for a species that hasn't achieved interstellar capability." The answer came through captured human radio transmissions. The primitive beings were communicating in clear tactical language, using terminology that suggested intimate familiarity with advanced military concepts. They discussed energy weapons, personal shielding, and enhanced reflexes as though such technologies were common knowledge rather than galactic-exclusive capabilities. More troubling were references to something called asymmetric warfare doctrine and superior technology neutralization protocols. The humans appeared to have developed specific strategies for combating technologically advanced opponents, strategies that were proving surprisingly effective against forces trained for 2 centuries in conquest operations. Zarathul began to suspect that Earth might not be the primitive backwater planet intelligence had described. These humans fought like warriors who understood exactly what they faced and had spent considerable time preparing countermeasures for galactic invasion scenarios. The first hour of operations ended with galactic forces controlling significantly less territory than planned, while human resistance showed no signs of weakening. If anything, their defensive operations seemed to be gaining momentum as more of their population joined the fighting. Something was very wrong with this conquest, and Zarathul was beginning to fear that 200 years of training might not have prepared them for whatever these humans actually represented. The truth struck Zarathul like a plasma bolt to the chest when she saw the human soldier remove his helmet during a brief cease in fighting. Beneath the primitive exterior equipment, advanced neural implants gleamed at his temples, technology that matched galactic standard augmentation systems. His eyes showed the telltale signs of enhanced reflexes and improved processing speed that only came from decades of military conditioning. "Impossible," she whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. This wasn't a primitive human defending his homeworld. This was a soldier whose training rivaled her own. The realization triggered a flood of tactical reassessment. Every assumption about Earth's technological level crumbled as she observed human forces deploying equipment that appeared crude but functioned with devastating efficiency. Their primitive projectile weapons fired rounds that somehow penetrated galactic armor through methods that defied conventional understanding. Torex's voice cut through the comm channels with unprecedented urgency. "All units, be advised. Intelligence reports are completely false. Human forces are demonstrating capabilities that exceed baseline galactic standard. Repeat, these are not primitive beings." The scope of their miscalculation became clear through intercepted human communications. Earth's military wasn't defending against an unexpected invasion. They were executing a carefully prepared defensive strategy against galactic forces. References to Project Omega Protocol and galactic engagement scenarios filled their radio transmissions. Zarathul watched in growing horror as a human squad executed a flanking maneuver that demonstrated perfect understanding of galactic small unit tactics. They moved with practiced precision, anticipated every counterstrike, and adapted to enhanced reflexes with the ease of warriors who had trained specifically against opponents with superior physical capabilities. The terrible truth emerged piece by piece through battlefield observations. These humans weren't primitive beings lucky enough to present unexpected resistance. They were soldiers whose training specifically focused on defeating galactic-level technology and tactics. Every move they made suggested intimate knowledge of how enhanced warriors fought and exactly how to counter such advantages. A captured human radio transmission provided the final piece of the puzzle. "Phoenix Base, this is Wolfpack Actual. Galactic forces are performing exactly as simulated. Repeat, 200-year training protocols are confirmed effective. Enemy capabilities match theoretical projections precisely." The humans had somehow acquired detailed intelligence about galactic military training methods. They knew about the academy, understood the enhancement procedures, and had developed specific countermeasures for every technique that galactic forces employed. This wasn't lucky resistance, it was scientific opposition. Admiral Kethvar's desperate transmission reached all ground forces simultaneously. "Emergency withdrawal authorized. All units return to extraction points immediately. Earth defensive capabilities exceed intelligence projections by 400%. But withdrawal proved impossible as human forces had anticipated this exact tactical response. Earth's primitive satellites suddenly revealed themselves as sophisticated weapons platforms, launching guided missiles that tracked fleeing dropships with impossible accuracy. The crude chemical propulsion systems concealed advanced targeting computers that compensated for every evasive maneuver. Landing zones that had been secured by galactic forces found themselves surrounded by human units that emerged from concealed positions with military precision. The primitive beings had somehow predicted exactly where galactic commanders would establish tactical centers and had prepared elaborate ambush scenarios for each location. Zarathul's squad found themselves trapped in a facility that transformed from apparent primitive construction into an advanced fortress. Hidden weapons ports opened in walls that had appeared to be simple concrete, revealing energy weapons that shouldn't have existed on this backward planet. The most devastating shock came when human soldiers began demonstrating combat techniques that matched Academy training standards. They executed advanced martial arts forms, employed enhanced tactical awareness, and fought with the fluid efficiency that only came from decades of intensive military conditioning. "How long have they been preparing for this?" Torex demanded, as their position came under assault from humans using tactics that perfectly countered Galactic's small unit protocols. The answer arrived through intelligence intercepts from human command channels. Operation Galactic Defense has been active for 50 Earth years. All personnel maintain level Alpha readiness for extraterrestrial contact scenarios. 50 years. The humans had spent 50 years preparing specifically for galactic invasion, developing countermeasures, training their forces, and creating technologies designed to neutralize every advantage that enhanced warriors possessed. While galactic forces trained for general conquest operations, Earth's military had focused exclusively on defeating opponents exactly like them. The battle began turning against galactic forces within the second hour. Human defensive lines not only held, but started advancing, pushing elite warriors back toward their landing zones through superior tactical coordination and devastating effective use of terrain advantages. Zarathul witnessed Goliath warriors, beings strong enough to crush titanium with their bare hands, falling to human soldiers who fought with primitive weapons enhanced by impossible tactical skill. The humans somehow knew exactly how to exploit the behavioral patterns that 200 years of Academy training had drilled into every galactic warrior. Reports flooded in from across the planet. Landing Zone Alpha overrun by human forces. Landing Zone Beta requesting emergency evacuation. Landing Zone Gamma completely destroyed by coordinated human assault. Every installation was falling to primitive beings who fought like they had attended the Academy themselves. The most crushing realization came when human forces began capturing galactic equipment and operating it with professional competence. They understood energy weapons, knew how to disable personal shields, and demonstrated familiarity with technologies that Earth supposedly had never encountered. "They've been studying us," Zarathul transmitted to her remaining squad members. "Somehow they know everything about our training, our equipment, our tactics. This whole operation was a trap." Admiral Kethvar confirmed her worst fears through a final broadcast. "All ground forces, Earth has demonstrated military capabilities that exceed galactic standard. Human forces appear to have trained specifically to counter our tactical doctrines. Immediate strategic withdrawal to hyperspace distance recommended." The evacuation became a rout as human forces pursued retreating galactic squads with relentless efficiency. Earth's primitive aircraft revealed themselves as sophisticated fighters capable of matching galactic technology, while their ground forces continued advancing with tactical precision that suggested extensive practice for exactly this scenario. Zarathul reached her extraction point just as human artillery, weapons that appeared primitive but functioned with deadly accuracy, began targeting the landing zone. Around her, thousands of elite warriors who had trained for 200 years fled in disorder before an enemy that had prepared for 50 years specifically to defeat them. The final tally proved devastating. 47,000 galactic casualties within 5 hours of initial contact. Nearly every landing zone overrun, most equipment captured or destroyed, complete tactical failure across all operational theaters. The most elite military force in galactic history had been systematically defeated by a supposedly primitive species. As the Eternal Dominion jumped to hyperspace, Admiral Kethvar filed his report with Galactic Command. Earth demonstrates military capabilities that exceed current threat assessments. Species shows evidence of extensive preparation for galactic contact scenarios. Recommend immediate reclassification from conquest target to strategic threat. Zarathul stared at the blue planet disappearing behind them, finally understanding the terrible truth. Earth hadn't been an easy conquest target. It had been a carefully prepared killing ground. The humans had somehow learned about galactic military capabilities and had spent decades transforming their entire civilization into a weapon designed specifically to destroy forces exactly like theirs. 200 years of training had lasted exactly 5 hours against opponents who understood them better than they understood themselves. The Academy had created the finest warriors in galactic history, but Earth had created something far more dangerous: soldiers whose only purpose was to kill those warriors. In the medical bay, surrounded by thousands of wounded elite troops, Zarathul realized that galactic expansion had just encountered its first real enemy, a species that fought not with superior technology, but with superior preparation, tactical intelligence, and the terrifying dedication to study their opponents until they could predict and counter every possible action. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again.